Just got off a Zoom call, the producer for an upcoming shoot. It's not my next job, but I need to shoot a test because they asked if I could shoot 6K instead of 4K. And I said, I can shoot 8K. I'm not sure if I can do 6, but it's going to be XAVC-H, which is a new version of the Sony XAVC codec. I think it's H.265, where the previous XAVC that's in like the FX9 is 264. Is that correct? Looking at my codec options, I've got HQ, SQ, and L. I cycled through all of them. Here, we'll do it again. 512 card in the camera, and in HQ, I think it's 70 minutes on 512. Wait, is it 512? Let's check. Yes, and I'm running ProGrade unapproved cards. Ooh, which is something else we should test. So HQ and then SQ, we get 103 minutes. And SQL, which is what I think I'm going to shoot for this project, 128 minutes. Long gop. With this firmware, it does not appear I can record in 6K. So I stepped down to 6K crop. Now I only have maybe an XOCN, let's see. Which we are not going to shoot for this project, because we want a video codec, we don't want to shoot raw. Looks like it killed my HDMI out. Projects. So yeah, I guess I can record 6K in the XOCN, but I want to shoot in AVC, so I can't do AVC 6K. So we'll shoot AVC 8K. They want us to frame 21 by 9. I made a document. That's weird. I've never had anyone request that. So I could do custom frame lines by framing it up. But then I went into the menus and realized that's just essentially 2.39. So we'll do 2.39. Okay, that job is more than a week out. Tomorrow I fly to Vegas for a different project, which I need to prep for and pack. First thing I need to do is borrow this Canon dummy battery off my Burano kits to run on my old 5D Mark IV as a time-lapse setup. Prepping for the Vegas trip, the equipment order is the same as last year, so I've got that saved in my notes and could easily check through these. The last few to get packed were the cache, the water bottle, and my MacBook. I managed to not check those, and I ended up forgetting the sunglasses, which was a mistake. And then the GoPro, we ended up canceling. I used my iPhone to shoot some walking hyperlapse instead. And Pelican 2, F22 green screen, tripods 1 and 2, we ended up, they canceled the interview room. So I had Nick come in from California with an FX9 and all of the lighting except for the F22 and green screen, but we didn't need any of it. My son's working on this project with me, so he helped prep all of the gear, wanted to set up the 2 time-lapse cameras and train him up, and he added to that same pack list a series of notes on how to set up each time-lapse shot: compose, exposure, focus, interval, exposure check. This were all slow shutter, 1 second shutter with ND 1.5, I think we put on each camera. Direct flight to Las Vegas on shoot day 1. We got the first flight out of San Antonio, so we had to grab our bags and get right to shooting. First up were some time lapse of the registration area and signage and artwork. We flew out with 3 cameras this year, all DSLR or mirrorless format, a 7D, a 5D Mark IV, 2 tripods. The only thing I use those Canon cameras for the last couple of years is time-lapse. And then FX3 on the Ronin for sizzle reel coverage. My assignment the next couple of days is just to get wide shots, hallway, people mingling, content to supplement the live switch crew. And the footage I use from this 2 days gets used for promotional and sizzle purposes to drive attendance the following year. But really the reason I'm here, well, one, I'm super excited to have my son now covering and shooting for me. He did about 75% of the gimbal work this year, and I was there more to just see my work on the big screen. So we traveled to 5 US states this year for this award show that takes place the evening of the last night of the conference. These are technology leaders in the industry in the U.S. Who get nominated for this national award. Kind of a big deal, I guess, in the IT world. And so, yeah, we basically fly to each person's office, place of business. It was 5 states this year. I think we did 8 nominees. And you can refer back to a couple of blog posts back to see where I traveled all over the country. Nick drove in from Orange County, FX9. He was originally assigned to shoot interviews on green screen of each of the nominees and then the award winner from last year. But they killed that, so instead Nick was out there shooting B-roll in the conference area and helped us supplement some of these MOS interviews. We only have about 15 minutes to try to capture as many MOS takeaways that we can get. These are just people reviewing the show. They get cut into a montage, again, to drive attendance. Next year, this is the line outside the theater just before the award show doors open. So we literally have a 15, maybe 20-minute window to grab as many MOS as possible. And this will be my last year where I'm going to be able to shoot like this without readers. You can see I'm leaning back. When my head's closer to the screen, I can't tell if it's in focus or not. And these interviews, I mean, it's so quick and fast moving. The little mirrorless camera's the right choice, but maybe next year I might bring the shoulder cam, or I was regretting in this moment not just using the FX9, which we had sitting back in the production office. Who am I kidding? Next year, this will probably all be cinema mode on an iPhone. From all my years shooting on Canon DSLRs and C300s, I've got all the common EF mount zoom lenses and primes, the L series, and I've been slowly replacing those with Sony E-mount. But I discovered today that Metabones announced EF to E-mount variable ND adapter, and it's under $600. So since I have the 70-200 and 16-35 Sonys on my wish list, maybe I'll get that Metabones adapter instead, with the one caveat: I need to verify that the autofocus is usable for basic interviews. And if it is, I'm definitely going to buy that and save myself over $4,000 buying 2 new Sony lenses that at this point I'm only using AF and those focal lengths for interviews. This conference took place on the anniversary of September 11th, and the celebrity speaker this year was Captain Sully Sullenberger. And not a dry eye in the house. That was kind of a powerful kickoff, national anthem, military, color guard, and then we had Sully speaking, and powerful, somber day. It was kind of nice to have a corporate conference that was talking about unity and country. New video wall vendor this year, and there were some issues that I think only affected us on the camera side. We're probably also the only ones to notice. First up, it was kind of crushed blacks and oversaturated skin tones. And then I think they had some kind of like dynamic contrast management auto thing enabled, because the video level would fade up and down, much like when you buy a consumer television and first set it up, all those like factory auto settings. And then second, on all of my cameras, so FX3, iPhone, and the FX9, we had flicker at all shutter speeds. We could not clear it out. And I ran into that on another conference, different client in Austin a couple years ago. And it turned out that the dimmer setting they had the video wall set to was causing the pulsing. That same thing. We couldn't dial it out with shutter settings. And I also wondered if the camera chain, the live switch cams, which have global shutters, they were Sony cams, if those were flickering or not, thinking, well, maybe just the scan rate on the 9 and the 3 is too slow or out of phase and not something that can be corrected with shutter setting. But same subtle pulsing on the global scan cameras, just not as obvious. And next up on my rolling packages, sometimes the skin tones on the interviews were as I remember them, and on others they're like too pink or too magenta. It seemed very subject specific, and I thought, oh man, the editor must have gotten a little too aggressive on the color grade. But then I went back and watched the edits here on my MacBook. I got copies after the show, and all the skin tones look great to me on playback. So I don't know, there's some weird auto color, auto contrast changing. You can see it here in some of my iPhone footage. going on the video wall. So talked with the show producer. He was aware of it too before I brought it to his attention. I was in damage control initially. I'm like, look, we've got flicker on all of our gimbal coverage and I can't get rid of it. And Nick independently, actually Nick found it first and brought it to my attention. He discovered it on the FX9. I was not seeing it on the FX3 with the peaking enabled. And as soon as I clicked the peaking off, it was like, oh yeah, it's pulsing. But a couple of years ago, I salvaged some footage in Premiere with a third-party plugin that removes flicker. So that's what we're going to attempt again this year. I think we'll be okay. All right, with all that said, let's get into these nominee packages that I shot earlier, and I'll give you my thoughts and how I want to improve next year.
To be a successful IT leader,
Pontiac, Michigan. It's kind of midstream on our travel trip. This is the former GM plant. It's two massive buildings and what they told me was the largest pedestrian sky bridge in the United States. Beautiful facility, cannot frame a bad shot. Interview single camera, UHD record on the Burano, 50mm lens, f2.0. Light kit is one NEEWER panel with an old Shimira on there with the heavier diffusion. And then all the B-rolls FX30 on the Ronin at 60 FPS. And I think we shot all the B-roll 1080. I might be wrong on that. But S-Log3, S-Gamut 3. The editor that's been cutting these packages for over a decade does his own color. And last couple of years, we shot Amira interviews, and gimbal cam was the Blackmagic Pocket 6K. So this is only my second year shooting Sony. I've been shooting this show since 2017. The previous DP, who was one of my mentors and sadly passed away in 2016, he shot the first, like, I think about a decade of this show from its inception, and it was all Sony. I think the first year might have been Betacam. It goes back that far. And then I think he was on an FS700 in 2016. And they were doing slider and tripod for B-roll at that point. And 2016 was the first year with the Osmo, the first gen DJI Osmo. They did a few wide shots on gimbal. And by 2017, I was able to flip right over to, I was running the Movi, the big boy gimbal with, I think I had a C300 Mark I on there. Well, lots changed. On the interview specifically, I was really wanted to get a nice ratio this year. I got a little too flat last year, key light on a Shimira, and then I was using a white bounce, I think, for most of them. So this year I tried to do a black on the fill side and just have the key wrapping into both eyes enough, but then to have, you know, just to have some fall off, but not to go too dark on the fill side. And because of the video wall inconsistencies in color this year and contrast, some interviews look better than others, but when I look at them here on playback, they all look fairly consistent to me. There's a little bit of change, like we had the female nominees, and they needed to have a little bit more, I felt, fill, a little higher key than the men. And then in one of the locations, I just couldn't get the ratio I wanted with the available light. But these are all single light interviews, and then grip controlling the rest of it. And I'm setting exposure to the ambient background levels.
To be a successful IT leader, I would say listening skills are more important.
Clearwater, Florida, same format. So you can see in my gimbal shots, they're about 75% manual focus. I like to do my own focus pulls because sometimes I just get burned too frequently with the AF hopping to a different subject. I like to always have, when I can, a foreground layer as part of my composition, and I like to do a lot of reveals, so I wipe off a wall or the back of a head just to have those transitional moves. This is stock footage from the client, although the drone shot of the building was something I captured on our way out. Here's an example of a foreground reveal. So I started fully on the wall, but in slow-mo, it was too slow of a camera move to use a reveal, and whoops, there's the boom pole. This guy's headroom, as I recall, he kind of shifted a lot in the chair, and I had a lot of pingy overhead sources on this interview in that office, and I had my travel 5-in-1 reflector set up overhead to cut as much as possible, but he was contained in like a little box. And this is a case where, you know, I had to get the overhead as low as possible to cut as much ping off his forehead and hairline, which meant the mic was a little too close to him. I want to switch out my travel boom pole kit with a right angle XLR. That extra few centimeters of distance would buy me a lot in when I'm in travel mode and I just have smaller overheads. And another viewer, shoot, I forget who it was, sent me, there's I think it's a Sanken condenser mic that is like super, super short. It's basically just the capsule and the cable's integrated into the capsule. And then there's like an XLR tail. So you only need like an inch or so of vertical height to get the mic in under an overhead. I would like to invest in one of those in the future. So I don't know if you can see a recurring theme here. We're always limited with, they're talking about tech and integration, these like intangible things. It's collaboration, people working in an office. And last 4 years, most people in this industry are now work from home. So each time we shoot one of these packages, we got to get our talent to recruit some of their coworkers to come into the office so we can stage some B-roll walk and talks, the whiteboard in the conference room, a little impromptu meeting in a lounge area, conference room setting.
To be a successful IT leader, I think they need to know the business as well as our business partners do and spend time understanding so we can create the best solutions for them going forward. Because there's really nothing we do today where technology is not in the middle of every solution.
Denver, Colorado, they provided a lot of stock footage, which I'm going to cut around. But again, just same canned conference room, meeting shots, lounge area, walk and talk in the Cube Farm, big conference room. The interview for this one, they had this big classroom set up, and that gave me the most depth. And I always like when I can get office workers and background activity in the interview frame. I really strive for that. Wasn't meant to be at this particular location, but same format, Burano 50mm f2.0, shot in UHD, final composition size, so there's no cropping taking place. In B-roll is FX3. I misspoke earlier. I said 30. It's all FX3 for the B-roll. 24-70 zoom, manual focus. But I run the FX3 in the flexible ISO mode, and I jump between auto exposure and manual just based on the setting. A lot of these walk and talks, I'll switch over to autofocus, and anytime it's like a low angle, wide, looking up for walking, I'm in autofocus. But all the tighter compositions, this whiteboard stuff, this is all manual, so I can selectively choose who to hold focus on. And I've been pulling my own focus for so many years that I'm still comfortable with it. But as I mentioned earlier, when we were doing those man on the street interviews, I need to start wearing readers when I'm operating, looking at a screen on a gimbal camera close to my face versus an EVF with a diopter.
Successful IT leader, in my opinion, is someone who's very adaptable, looking at leadership from a very...
Lansing, Michigan. We travel and shoot these at the pace of news, but with a higher production value. It's myself, Scott, the producer, and Stephanie, the show producer, who's also the client. Team of 3. She client manages. Scott conducts the interviews. He helps me set up lights and sandbags and run cable while I get the shot framed. But we got to get in and out with these things. We either travel in or out on the shoot day, and we just leapfrog to the next one. Fortunately, this year we had 3 packages in the state of Michigan. So for 2 of those, all we had to do was drive to the next city the night before. And we ended in Pontiac and then flew to Florida. And we had the weekend off in Florida, Clearwater, which was super nice. Ate some good Cuban cuisine. You can refer back a couple of vlog posts back if you want to see a little bit of BTS on how we put those packages together. Had some extensive autofocus hunting on this interview on the Burano. I'm not sure why it was limited to this one, and I missed it in the EVF. I need to bring a bigger monitor with me going forward. This is with it set to setting 3 for slow for autofocus speed and also to remain locked on a face once it finds one. But I think I'm going to go down to number 1 going forward, and there's that boom pole again. So for next year, I'm going to find and invest in that shorter condenser. I think it was a Sheps, not a Sanken. I'll figure it out. But please, if you got any other suggestions on how to keep this even leaner and more efficient going forward, I need to travel with 2 camera bodies. It's just a requirement to have that backup for this client. So that's why FX3 and the Burano. I know I could probably shoot the interviews FX3, but I like having the very ND and the big camera for the IO options. And it's not like that Burano body's really that much bigger. It didn't add a case to the trip. A couple of Pelican 16-15s with Trek Pack dividers, and I'm good to go. Please, let's continue this discussion in the comments below. I'd love to get your feedback and suggestions for 2025.
Yeah. So I've got the crooked hairline right.
Steve. Oh, your pen's dying.